All right, let's dive into this, huh? Looks like we've got a lot to cover today. You've sent us a ton of stuff about this whole DOGE thing.
The Department of Government Efficiency, right?
Yeah, that's it, the Department of Government Efficiency.
Yep.
And we've got it all, news articles, Reddit threads, even a whole Wikipedia page already.
It's really taken off.
Yeah, it seems like DOGE has got everyone talking, and you know what? I get it.
It is a hot topic, yeah, and for good reason. I mean, we're talking about a potential overhaul of the U.S. government and
With Elon Musk at the helm, right?
spearheaded by Elon Musk, no
Yeah.
less. So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack here.
Okay, so first things first, let's break down DOGE, in a way that someone like, say, my grandma, who doesn't follow politics at all, could understand. What is this all about?
Okay, absolutely. In the simplest terms, President Trump announced DOGE back in November 2024. And the goal, was to make the government more efficient.
So less waste, faster processes.
Exactly. Think less waste, faster processes, and to potentially even lower taxes.
Sounds pretty good on paper, right?
Sounds good on paper, yeah.
But you mentioned Elon Musk. Where does he fit into all of this?
Well, that's where things start to get really interesting. Trump chose Musk and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy to lead DOGE.
Really? So it was his initiative?
Yep, Trump's. And let's be honest, having Musk involved instantly turned DOGE into a media frenzy.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
He is, well, such a polarizing figure.
For sure.
But okay, I have to ask you about the name DOGE. It's very, I don't know, internet-y.
It is, isn't it? And that's not a coincidence. DOGE has very clear ties to Dogecoin, that cryptocurrency that Musk is always talking about. In fact, when the DOGE website launched, it had the Dogecoin Shiba Inu dog as its logo.
Wait a minute. So the government is using a meme as its mascot? I mean, is this a serious policy or some kind of joke?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And honestly, that ambiguity is part of what makes DOGE so fascinating. Some people took it as a sign that this whole thing wasn't a serious policy initiative.
Yeah, I could see that.
While others thought it was brilliant. A stroke of genius to get attention and generate buzz.
Okay, so it could cut both ways, I guess. But putting the memes aside for a second, what were DOGE's actual goals?
Well, Musk, right out of the gate, made some pretty bold claims. He suggested that DOGE could cut $2 trillion from the budget.
$2 trillion.
$2 trillion.
That's an insane amount of money. How did he propose to do that?
Well, he talked about consolidating federal agencies. There are over 400 of them.
Yeah.
He suggested cutting it down to less than 100.
Wow. So basically a massive bureaucratic shakeup.
Exactly. A complete overhaul. And actually, Ramaswamy went even further. He suggested they could eliminate entire agencies and maybe even cut the federal workforce by 75%.
Whoa. That's radical.
It is, isn't it?
And speaking of radical, I was reading somewhere that they wanted to bring Ron Paul on board.
Yeah, apparently they tried to get Ron Paul to join the team, which, again, signaled that this wasn't just about efficiency. It was about a very specific ideology. Ron Paul, is a big advocate for limited government.
Sure, so his involvement would appeal to a certain segment of the population, for sure.
Exactly.
So, okay, we've got meme mascots, massive budget cuts, and a, well, libertarian icon potentially joining the team. This is already getting pretty wild right from the start.
It was. Oh, it was. And it wasn't just talk. A congressional caucus actually formed to support DOGE, which showed they were gaining some real political traction. There were even plans for a new subcommittee led by, you guessed it, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Wow.
And they were going to work directly with DOGE on cutting spending.
Okay, so DOGE had some serious momentum behind it, at least initially. But something tells me this doesn't end with everyone happily streamlining the government and, saving money.
You're right about that. Just as DOGE was really gaining steam, things took a pretty dramatic turn.
Oh, okay. What happened? What kind of drama were we talking about?
Well, first off, Ramaswamy ended up getting kicked out of DOGE after he made some pretty controversial comments about American workers.
Oh, boy. That's never a good sign. What did he say?
He basically said that American workers valued mediocrity more than excellence, which, of course, caused a huge backlash and ultimately, led to him leaving DOGE.
Yeah, I can see how that wouldn't go over well.
And then to make matters worse, a bunch of lawsuits were filed claiming that DOGE was violating transparency laws.
So not only internal conflict, but legal challenges, too.
Exactly. Critics were arguing that DOGE was operating in secrecy, and potentially breaking federal laws.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
It was a messy situation, to say the least.
And all this before DOGE even really got started.
Pretty much. And here's another thing. Remember how DOGE was supposed to make the government smaller?
Yeah.
Well, DOGE itself isn't even a real part of the government.
Wait, what? What does that even mean?
It means it's temporary.
A temporary organization.
Set to expire on July 4th, 2026. Talk about a ticking clock.
So we have a temporary organization led by, let's say, controversial figures, trying to reshape the entire government in a short amount of time, while facing lawsuits and internal problems.
That's about the size of it.
This whole DOGE thing is like a political thriller in real life.
It really is. And you know what's even more interesting? Beneath all the drama and the meme-worthy headlines, it raised some important questions about the role of government in the 21st century. You know, the use of technology, the nature of work, even.
Okay, now I am really hooked. We've got a lot more to cover.
We do.
All right, so DOGE is, well, this crazy mix of ambition, controversial figures, and a whole lot of drama. But before we go any further, let's take a step back. Like, what was DOGE's official purpose? What were they actually supposed to be doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's where a lot of the confusion starts, honestly. Because according to the executive order, DOGE's purpose was to modernize federal technology and software
Okay,
to maximize governmental efficiency and productivity. That's what it said.
wait a minute. That's kind of different from, slashing the budget and shrinking the government. Was that all just hype?
That's a big part of this whole puzzle. While Trump campaigned on, smaller government, DOGE's mandate was narrower. It was focused on technology.
So was it like a bait and switch? Or just, I don't know, changing priorities?
That's up for debate, yeah.
Okay, but is there even a connection between, like, technology and a smaller government? How do you get fewer employees by upgrading software?
That's where things get really interesting. See, one of DOGE's big ideas was to bring government systems up to, quote, private sector standards.
So, like, make it more like what you'd find at a tech company.
Exactly. Streamline things. And potentially, this is key, open the door to outsourcing or contracting with private companies.
Ah, so if the government's IT is, like, modern, it's easier to just hand stuff over to outside companies to handle.
Exactly. And that aligns with the whole, philosophy of privatization, something that's been around in conservative politics for a while.
Okay, but wouldn't that raise some concerns about, like, transparency and accountability? You're handing over government stuff to, well, private companies. How do you know they're doing what's best for everyone?
That's a huge point of contention, for sure. And remember those lawsuits, a lot of them were about exactly that.
Right.
Critics said that DOGE was creating a shadow government, one that wasn't accountable to the public.
So it's almost like you're trading one set of problems for another. Like, you might get efficiency, but you lose transparency.
It's a trade-off, a complex one. And there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
But it's at the heart of what DOGE was all about.
Okay, so we have this kind of contradictory thing happening. Officially, DOGE is about technology.
Yeah.
But their actions, the rhetoric, all points to a bigger agenda. Shrink the government.
Yeah.
More private companies.
It's a nuanced picture, yeah. And it gets even more complicated when you look at the specific agencies they were focusing on. Like, they were going after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and even the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation.
Whoa, those are big targets. The CFPB's, like, protecting consumers from predatory lending. And the FDIC, that's, insurance for bank deposits. Why go after them?
Well, it fits into this broader idea of deregulation. Both of those agencies regulate the financial industry, and some people, especially libertarians, see that as a burden on business.
So they were basically trying to weaken the agencies that are supposed to protect consumers.
It's definitely a risky move. And remember, both Musk and Ramaswamy, their companies could benefit from less regulation.
Oh, right. So there's that whole conflict of interest thing.
Yeah, critics said that DOGE was about making them richer, not serving the public.
Which, added fuel to the fire.
It did, but to be fair, even some of DOGE critics said there might be places where government could be more efficient.
So there was some common ground.
Seems like it. For example, cutting defense spending. Both Democrats and Republicans have talked about waste in the military.
Yeah, I think most people agree that, like, we don't want to waste money on stuff we don't need.
Right, exactly. And that's part of what made DOGE so interesting. It sparked a conversation, a real conversation, about government that went beyond the usual partisan lines.
So even if DOGE doesn't accomplish everything it set out to do, it made people think differently about the role of government.
Yeah, it was like a catalyst. And that in itself might be a pretty big accomplishment.
I like that. So we've talked about DOGE's goals, the problems, the different agendas, but what does it all mean? How should we think about DOGE in the bigger picture?
Well, if we step back, DOGE shows this trend, right? Technology is changing everything, including government.
So like how Uber disrupted taxis or Airbnb changed hotels, DOGE was trying to disrupt government.
In a way, yes, it's about using tech to challenge how things are done, maybe create a more efficient digital government.
Right.
But the big question is that good or bad? What are the consequences?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it leads us to the next part of our deep dive. Let's explore those potential consequences, the good and the bad, of DOGE's vision for the future. All right, so we've covered a lot with DOGE. The big names, the big promises, the controversies, the lawsuits. We even talked about the memes.
Yeah, we did.
But I think it's time to get to the heart of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Let's imagine, just for a minute, that DOGE actually worked. Like they actually achieved their goals.
Okay.
What would that even look like? A smaller, more efficient government, and how would it affect people's lives?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's one that causes a lot of debate. On the one hand, you have DOGE's supporters. They argue that a leaner government means lower taxes, less bureaucracy, and more freedom, for people and businesses.
So classic get the government off our backs kind of argument.
Yeah, exactly. They believe that by streamlining things, cutting bureaucracy, embracing technology, the government can actually become more responsive to citizens and at the same time reduce its footprint.
Okay, so a smaller government that's actually better at serving people.
That's the idea. A government that operates more like a well-oiled machine.
Okay. I can see the appeal of that. But what about the other side? Like, what are the downsides to shrinking the government so much?
Well, that's where things get a little more complicated and, to be honest, a little more concerning. Critics of DOGE say that cutting funding and personnel could lead to a decline in, the quality of services the government provides.
Like what kinds of services?
Essential stuff. Healthcare, education, infrastructure, environmental protection, all of that could suffer if you shrink the government too much.
So it's almost a trade-off. Like you might get things done faster and cheaper, but you lose quality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Efficiency versus effectiveness. And it's not just about those direct impacts either. There's also the potential for, a ripple effect. Unintended consequences.
Like what?
Well, a smaller government might not be able to, say, regulate industries as well, or enforce laws, or respond to emergencies.
Yeah, that's kind of scary when you think about it that way.
It is. It seems like there's a balance to be struck. You want a government that's efficient, sure, but it also has to be able to do its job effectively.
Absolutely. And that's why it's important to have these discussions, right? We need to think critically about the potential consequences of policies like the ones DOGE proposed.
I agree. It's not as simple as saying smaller government is better. It's about finding that right balance to meet people's needs while also being responsible with, taxpayer money.
So after all this deep diving into DOGE, what are the key takeaways for our listeners? Like, what should they keep in mind as this whole experiment plays out?
A few things. First, I think DOGE really shows the power of, memes. And internet culture. I mean, who would have thought a meme could influence the government like this?
It's wild, right? The lines between, the internet and politics are getting really blurry.
They are. Second, I think DOGE highlights this tension between efficiency and other important values, accountability, transparency. It makes us ask, what are we willing to give up for a more efficient government?
So efficiency isn't the only thing that matters.
Right. Sometimes a little bit of, inefficiency might be necessary to protect people's rights, make sure things are fair, that kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
And finally, I think DOGE raises these big questions about technology, right? And its role in shaping the future of government. How do we use technology to make government better, more responsive?
But also avoid, becoming too detached from people.
Exactly. It's a balancing act. And these are questions we need to keep thinking about as technology keeps advancing.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive, I have to say. We really explored all the different facets of DOGE, the personalities, the promises, the potential consequences. And I think it's clear that this story is about so much more than just efficiency, right?
It is, yeah.
It's about power, it's about ideology, it's about technology, and at the end of the day, it's about the future of our democracy.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
DOGE is like a microcosm of, all the challenges and opportunities democracies are facing right now.
And on that note, we'll leave you to think about the implications of DOGE, what it could mean for the future. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.